You could be wondering that, well, I can create my own XML file. I can pretty much use anything as a start tag and its corresponding end tag, provided I stick to some of the rules that we learned about earlier. And then I can put some content between the start and end tags. But what's the big deal? How am I or an application using my XML going to make any sense of this? Well, to understand that, you need to understand the concept of key and value, right? In XML, the tags act as keys and the content within the tags acts as values, right? So every key will have a specific value assigned to it. Also remember that the value itself can be any number of key value pairs, right? So this can go on infinitely depending on the number of levels of hierarchy that you need, right? So let's look at this example below to understand a little bit more about this. Now, the best way to understand the concept of key value is by looking at a directory structure. Now, if you've worked with files and directories before, you know that you could go down to any level of depth, right? So let's look at this example that we've given here. We start at the root, follow it up by user, then have numbers to denote users, and within each user we have further directories such as documents, downloads, desktop, so on, which in turn might contain other directories or files, right? So this is a typical directory a tree structure that you would normally encounter. Well, now if you want to represent this in XML, how would we do it? So what I've done here is I have given you a small snippet, right? I have not done the entire thing for you, giving you a small snippet. So let's look at what this snippet consists of. So at the top level we have root, follow it up with the directory with attribute name and value user. So here is an instance where attributes are desirable, right? So we open a tag or we define a directory tag and assign it an attribute name and provide it a value user. Within this, so within the directory with attribute name equal to user, we have additional key value pairs, right? So for the directory with the attribute name and value user, the content is its key, as we just saw, right? So but the key itself is a set of key value pairs, right? So do you see what's happening here? So now let's look at the lowest level entity that we have in this case, right? So which is a file. So we have a file which is the key, and we have an attribute called name with value music.mp3, right? Its parent is a directory with an attribute name and value internet. The parent of this directory tag or directory element is the directory with name to downloads, so on and so forth, right? So you see how the directory structure is very conveniently represented using XML. And I do hope that you also appreciate how we use the concept of key and value while defining the XML in our case, right? So let's just hit preview and see what kind of output is shown here, right? So it's something that is more visually appealing, and you see that the browser automatically detects that it's an XML, highlights the elements or the tags or the keys differently, highlights the attributes differently, and also showcases the hierarchy. Great. Now let us look at a case wherein an application would use an XML and process it and do something with it. So whenever an application will receive an XML, it will need to run a program or a script or an algorithm to make sense of the data and present it in a particular fashion, right? What we've done here is we have created a small XML parser in PHP which will read the XML you create here in the editor and deconstruct it into raw data. So right, so let's do one thing. Let's just run the parser straight away and see what PHP does. Okay, so what you see here is we have three sections to the output. The first section is the index array section. The second section is the vals array section. And finally, we have some of the tags listed here, right? Now let's try and understand what these sections mean. So the index array is nothing but a set of pointers to the values that you have provided in your XML file. Okay, so let's just understand how this works. So let's look at the file array inside the index array. So what do you see here? The file array contains of two data sets, right? The first one points to the number 7. The second one points to the number 9. Okay. Now I mentioned that these are pointers to the actual locations of data in your vals array. Okay. So let's just look at 7 and 9 in the vals array. Okay. So let's scroll down. So there you go. So as you can see, 7 indeed points to the file, and what you see here is that you get the content you really want, which is setup.exe, which, if you remember, in our case is an attribute defined for this file tag. If you look at the 9th location or the index 9, we get the second file, which is music.mp3. So similarly, if you look at the directory subarray, it is going to point to all the indices in the vals array that will contain the relevant information for you. Okay, so this is typically how PHP will deconstruct an XML. Other languages will have different but similar in spirit methods to do the same thing. So just play around with this, keep adding different XML constructs, try and work with different data sets and see what the PHP parser shows you.